Hey everyone, welcome to the long-awaited walkthrough video of Hogwarts Castle. Now this MOC took roughly 1 year to build and was inspired primarily by Hogwarts Legacy and contains roughly 25,000 pieces. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a full tour of the entire castle, interior and exterior, and showing off every detail. Now, while this is not the biggest MOC I have ever built, it is by far the most complex and therefore the one that I am the most proud of. Hogwarts has not only got fully detailed interiors, but it has got a fully connected interior as well. So minifigures can actually travel through all parts of the castle. There are doorways, passageways between almost every single room, and that was a key focus for what I was trying to do. The main source of reference material came from these two books. On my right here we have The Art and Making of Hogwarts Legacy, and it is a bunch of behind the scenes concept art and visuals for all the scenes in the game, and it gives me a better look at certain classrooms, certain figures, and certain locations throughout the Harry Potter world. On my left here we have the original blueprints book from the Harry Potter movies, and this is a architectural masterpiece of different sections, elevations, plans of every single set that they had to design for the movies. Now of course, while this castle is primarily inspired by Hogwarts Legacy, I did take significant influence from the books because at the end of the day, the castle does share much of the same aesthetic, and that book was very helpful in understanding proportions and figuring out how to lay everything out. So, in its current state, this Hogwarts MOC is showcasing about 70% of what is the entirety of Hogwarts Castle. The rest of it is sitting behind essentially the section cut of this MOC, and it would be the clock tower behind this area over here, and a few other buildings over there, as well as the majority of the Hogwarts grounds and the Quidditch pitch, and so on and so forth. However, I chose to display my Hogwarts as this because I wanted to bring a bigger emphasis to the interiors, and by cutting it in such a way, you will see in a bit that I was able to showcase a lot of the interiors a lot more practically. Now the MOC is 8 base plates long by 2.5 base plates wide, and it separates right in the middle at 4 base plates in half, and that's what was able to allow me to transport this MOC, as well as most of the buildings are able to pop off, which significantly reduced weight and made sure that I wasn't going to damage anything by dropping it. So the proportions and scale of this castle were really important to nail from the off. So when I started building, I decided to commence with the Great Hall because it is perhaps the most iconic building in the entire Hogwarts castle. I needed to get that right first so that the rest of the castle would match proportions of the Great Hall, and it would all tick perfectly. The Great Hall is the tallest building in terms of how raised it is from the water. It's about 12 bricks off of the water surface, and it gradually slopes down to just about 1 brick at the very end of the MOC over there. This was inspired by Hogwarts Legacy, of course, so this is why it might look slightly different to the Great Halls that you're used to seeing. It's very skinny, it's very slim, and it's very tall, and it's a style that I was quite happy turned out very accurate to the Hogwarts Legacy game. We do have a courtyard right here in the front with a wraparound porch style that connects to other bits of the castle down to the boathouse and runs along the back of the Great Hall. Around the back here we have this beautiful bay window which overlooks part of a black lake, and by zooming in you can just see a glimpse at the back of Dumbledore's head, which we'll be taking a better look at as we see the interior of the Great Hall. Up above we have a sand green and dark bluish grey mixed roof, and that was a theme that was continued across the rest of the castle and was decided on because I wanted to give a little bit more of a realistic weathering look to the castle. And to copy that, on the actual brickwork the primary color is tan, with medium nougat as the main accent color. The inset courtyard extends from the main wall of the Great Hall, and a passageway continues around the edge, which leads down here to the boathouse. Now this boathouse in fact is most of the original set, and I cannot claim this as my own MOC, but I have modified the grounds around it to incorporate it into the rest of the build, and it is a very, very beautiful set, and I have to say, and I have to admit, that this is better than anything I could have created at such a small scale. Now the Great Hall is offset at 45 degrees from the rest of the MOC. It's sitting on its own independent base plates, and yes, I did say base plates and not regular plates. It is sitting on 2 16 by 32 plates and 2 8 by 32 plates, so it is 3/4 the width of a regular base plate and 2 base plates long. And in order to integrate it with the water, we have got a few trans-clear plates here to act as the foam brushing up against the rocks. And as we come around the side over here, you can see how it was integrated into the rockwork and into the rest of the castle at that 45-degree angle. We have a corridor leading from the Great Hall into the grand staircase tower over here. And then here we have the entrance to what is known as the quad. Across the main viaduct bridge, we have a little scene here between Snape fighting against some of the other professors with a bunch of braziers lit. And we have the viaduct entrance on the other side. As I said, everything in this castle is connected, so when you leave the Great Hall from the main entrance, you can either go into the Grand Staircase Tower, or you can come out through this front courtyard, come round, either cross the bridge, or continue around the front to the quad courtyard over here. And there is a large opening where we have Fred and George, definitely not planning anything, in front of a nice statue there, which was stolen from one of the chessboard sets. One aspect I did really want to capture was this gorge that carries through the middle of the MOC and goes between these two towers. There is a small indication of a bridge here that connects the two buildings. Now, while minifigures cannot access that, it is more for show and shows how the two parts of the castle would be connected. So as we come further around the front, we approach what is more commonly known as the East Wing of Hogwarts. Now, a little bit of an architectural insight. This is a bit of castle that is quite directly influenced by Scottish and English castle design, early castle design of cathedrals and abbeys. I'll put a picture up on the screen right now to show you what I mean, but you can see the direct similarities in the shaping and structure of this section in comparison to real life castles. Now, before I continue any further, you might be wondering what is actually inside most of these buildings, because I am skimming over the front at the moment. This is the viaduct entrance over here, of course, and it has two large turrets that are framing the bridge. Now, typically in this building is mostly corridors and stairwells. However, I didn't want to dedicate an entire building simply to a passageway or a corridor, so I decided that would actually become a room. And one of the main focuses of this MOC is I wanted to make sure that all of the key interiors were included in this MOC. Specifically, I wanted to make sure that each of the four houses got their own common room and that it was big enough to really show them off. So in the viaduct entrance, for example, is the Gryffindor common room, which I will show you in a second. Underneath the Great Hall, in this front section, is the Slytherin common room. Underneath the Grand Staircase Tower is the Hufflepuff common room. And in the Astronomy Tower, on the top floor, is the Ravenclaw common room. So let's take a look at the Gryffindor common room to get us started. Now here we have the back of the viaduct entrance, and as you can see, I decided to concentrate the interior on this center section of the MOC. So actually, the right and left sides of this MOC is completely empty, and that's only because it would be quite hard to get around and into. There's only about 6 bricks wide in there. So what we have in front of us is 2 floors of the Gryffindor common room and the dormitories up above. Now down below we have, of course, the main part of the Gryffindor dormitories, which is the main common room, and you can see a fireplace over there on the left, as well as a few portraits and such scattered across the walls. In the center we have a small rug and some chairs. Over here we have a little desk, and the main part of this room, if we can get a glimpse into it, is that there is a staircase that leads up the right hand side and a sort of half-height balcony where people can overlook the main part of the common room and take the stairs further up to the dormitory. Those stairs that lead you up to the dormitory then have a door at the back side, so you can actually enter this space from down below. And it's a very simple room with just 2 beds on either side, as you can see right here and right there. And we have a little table on this side with Hedwig, and back there we have Ron's barn owl, Errol. So again, just to reiterate, the main interior is using this central bit of this bit of the castle, and the door would enter into here, and there is a small passageway in the front, which would then lead you through the portrait of the fat lady into the Gryffindor common room behind. Now that is not exactly canonically accurate, because of course they are in a tower rather than off of a external entrance, but that is how this was designed. And here's just a last look, getting an idea of what the Gryffindor common room does in fact look like. And for those who are interested, this is what the castle MOC looks like underneath all of the buildings, with the viaduct entrance and the central tower, or the majority of it, now removed. You get an idea of the sort of filler brick that is being used to support it all. Right here between the yellow and the grey is the split between the two halves of the MOC, so the viaduct entrance is the only building that crosses between those two halves. Moving on, we have the central tower right here in the middle with an annex coming off of the front, as well as a smaller one that protrudes out the back, and it makes sort of a cruciform shape right here in the middle of the plan. In this section, I have divided it into 3 different floors. We have Transfiguration, Charms, and Divination classrooms all stacked within here, so let's take a look at that. So the design of these spaces is quite unusual in terms of how I had to make it slightly modular. The first is probably the most easy. I have to first remove this column here, and then I can fully remove the roof, and it gives us an insight into the divination classroom. Now, full of all sorts of teapots and assortment of weird things in here is the divination classroom. It is a very short space. In fact, it's only 4 bricks tall, excluding the roof, of course. So minifigures will either have to sit on the edges or they will stand in the middle. But overall, this was a space that was very small that I had to figure out a good use for. And I was able to cram in what I believe to be quite an interesting and small little divination classroom. Below this classroom lies another classroom, of course. And this one is removed straight up, and we take a look at the charms classroom beneath that. Now, this classroom is probably the only one that is very recognizable from the outside in the fact that you have a large window looking in on it, so there are plenty of light. Taking a peek inside at the charms classroom, it is a very tall space, of course, with 2 rows of benches with Phileas Flitwick standing on a stack of books, and a framed window, even though there isn't a real window behind it. It is in fact just the roof line, but I wanted to introduce what would be a little bit of light into this space. It is a very fun little interior. Now, at this point, the modular design gets a little bit interesting in that the walls don't come apart on this floor. In fact, I lift off the roof, and this is connected to the floor by one side, and a lot of breakages. And there you have the charms classroom coming off in one go, and we can take a look at what lays beneath. Now, this was of course one of the very first interiors that I was able to do when building Hogwarts, which is why it's, as far as things go, a lot simpler than some of the others, and it is very deep into the plan. Of course, it's on the ground floor, and it's before all of this rock work was done, and I wasn't quite sure what this facade was going to look like, so as of right now, it's a bit impractical to look into, but I do also quite like the way that I was able to modularize everything so that once it's all together, it looks like one seamless chunk, but there are in fact 3 distinct floors, and I was able to pack in a lot of the iconic Hogwarts interiors. You can also see these gray corner wedge tiles around the edges. It's a lot of rhyming words, and this is where the platform for the next floor sits on, so it's actually just resting on top of those. And removing the rest of the tower behind it gives you a better look at this space deep in this plan over here. Now, this is one of the more central areas of the entire Hogwarts Castle, where you have a doorway right here into what is the library behind this wall over here, and we have steps leading up to this room over here, as well as an exit out to the castle grounds. Inside this space, it's fairly simple again because it was one of the first I built, but we have a statue in the middle, some decorations on the wall in the form of potion vials and posters and such. And we're going to go upside down for a little bit, but then we also have these cavities on the wall just for a little bit of extra depth. And while I have you at this angle, I'll just give you a sneak peek at the Astronomy Tower in behind it. Now, this is probably one of the more unique buildings in this entire castle, simply for its form. It is rectangular on this side and completely curved on the back side, so it's almost 2 different buildings when you're viewing it like this versus viewing it from this angle over here. And one of the more interesting details is, of course, as you progress up the building, it changes as well. So at the bottom, it's a lot heftier, especially this section that sticks out the front. We have some buttresses acting as sort of a support against the water down below. And then we have a small roof that slopes in, and then the rest of the tower continues as such. So this is the main part of the central tower that I've designed as being fully removable from the MOC, not only to reduce weight when I'm trying to transport it, but also for showing it off like this and taking a deeper dive into some of the interiors. Now the top 2 floors have got back panels on them, which we'll be taking a look at, whereas the bottom 2 floors are fully modular and they can be looked at from above. So we'll start from the bottom and work our way up. So the bottom 2 floors, as you may have noticed, don't have any windows, and that is because they go right up against the roof lines of the supporting buildings right next to it. So instead of looking at it as a way of, well, how am I going to design a room now if there's no windows, I decided to look at spaces in the castle that don't have any windows to begin with and use that to my strength. So what we have here is a small vignette in a 16 by 16 space of the room of requirement from the 5th movie, The Order of the Phoenix. Now this is heavily inspired by the actual set that came out from Lego, and I decided to just reuse a lot of the same pieces and create just a small fun little vignette. Here we have Hermione casting a Patronus. We've got that famous mirror board on the back wall there, and Harry, of course, in the middle, a trunk. Very simple room, but it does fill the space in an otherwise useless bit of the tower. Above that, we have a very fun room, and this is, in fact, something that only shows in the books, and this is the Weasley Swamp, again from the Order of the Phoenix. Now, at the end of the book, Fred and George decide to use one of their experimental bits of magic and throw it in the corridor on either the 3rd or the 5th floor, and it creates a portable swamp. And so what we have here is Filch punting students across the water, across the corridor, to get them to and from classes. Now, this is solely based on descriptions from the book, and I decided to have a little bit of fun here. There is essentially a river of water down the middle with some dark green wedges on either side and plastered with a bunch of foliage. And we have a fun little construction sign here just to indicate that there is, in fact, something wrong going on over here. Now this here is probably one of the hardest interiors to get a good look at, and this is going to be Moaning Myrtle's bathroom from the Chamber of Secrets. Without toppling the minifigures over, I will just take them out for a second so that you can get a better look at what's going on over here. But this is essentially the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets. You can see how the center bit is lifting out. Now that is from one of the official sets. So at this stage of doing the interiors, I decided to rely quite heavily on what the sets offered, simply because I genuinely believed they were very good. And because I was dealing with such small spaces, I was quite happy to just incorporate them and build around it to make it seem like a full and, well, a livable space. We do have a stall right here on the corner, and a cauldron in the other corner where they were making polyjuice. Above that floor, we have another panel that comes up. Instead of hinging, this one is fully removable, and inside we get a peek at Dumbledore's office. So this one was an interesting one to design simply because I did not have a lot of space to deal with, and I wanted to pack as much detail as possible, and we were also dealing with a square design, whereas Dumbledore's office is typically a circle. So we have Dumbledore's desk on a sort of raised wooden platform, and I used some rounded plates in order to give it a little bit of a curved effect. We have a few portraits and such on the walls, as you can see, as well as the Hogwarts logo in the background, and a few candles and general architectural detailing on the back wall. On the rear annex of the central tower, we have one of the last interiors that was made, and this is going to be the teacher's lounge or the staff room. And I decided to design this loosely around the 3rd movie, where they do describe that there is a boggart that lives in the staff room, and that is, of course, where Lupin gets the boggart for the 3rd year Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. Now, in the books, it's actually described that that class happens in the teacher's lounge rather than in the regular Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom. So I decided to, and you'll have to ignore Moody because that is not exactly canon, but I did decide to design this around the actual closet that does appear in the movie, trying to get the general shaping, and this was based loosely on the Mirror of Erised, which is that sticker there in the middle, and everything was built around it. With that out of the way, you can see a little bit of a glimpse into a table over there on the corner, as well as some awards to the school. So it is partially a trophy room just to sort of fill the space, and a few trinkets up there on the higher shelf. Again, this is just one of these sections of castle that is not particularly big or shaped incredibly well, but I did want to make use of it, and I think the teacher's lounge was a great fit. Around the front here we have the castle wall, and Right in here we have a little vignette, if you will, of the greenhouses. Now, I would have loved to have done several of these, but with the space that I was allocating for the greenhouses, which is quite accurate to where they are in the movies, I was only able to afford one. Now, this is a modified version of the greenhouse that comes in the 2019, I want to say, Astronomy set. I've essentially just used two of them and enlarged it to fit with the scale a little bit better and actually have something going on. The roof does remove, and there is just a simple table in the middle with 4 mandrakes. We have a little scene here of Luna letting Harry know in the Order of the Phoenix that she does believe that Voldemort is back. And we have a path that leads from the greenhouses along the side of the wall and back into the castle grounds over here, as well as this small little staircase where Harry walks up, and it is just a, I'll remove him for a second, it is just a little lookout over the castle wall. Hogwarts is nothing without the interior, so I wanted to make sure when I was designing this MOC that one of the most important things I would capture were the interiors of the castle, and I wanted to, as much as possible, make them actually work. So there are passageways between rooms, they all link up to stairwells, and everything is actually navigated by minifigures throughout the entirety of the MOC. Now, there are several different ways in which you can see the interiors of this castle. If it's deeper into the plan, some of the building roofs will come off and you can get a top-down view into some of the classrooms and other scenes. If it's aligned with the back, I've tried to make it a dollhouse style section where you can look right in, and in other buildings such as the Astronomy Tower right in the middle, you can see that I've developed hinge walls where you can open them when you please and you can get a sneak peek to the scenes. Now, the castle grounds are of course a very crucial part to the castle. It wouldn't be what it is without it. Now, when I was designing the castle grounds, I took a lot of inspiration from the Hogwarts Legacy game, which is why you see this building here, which isn't typically seen in the movies, and this is the gate to the castle grounds itself. There's a river that runs in front of it, and a path with a little bridge that would eventually lead to Hogsmeade and the Forbidden Forest. We have a little snapshot here in the corner of the Forbidden Forest and Harry Potter shooting off his Patronus against the Dementors. And of course, one of them has fallen victim. I've definitely not knocked that one over. But as we move inside to the castle grounds, you can see that most of this space is centered on this little courtyard, if you will, with a fountain right there in the middle and paths leading in various directions out here to the exit of the castle grounds, Hagrid's hut over here, the main door to the bell towers, and around the front of the castle grounds. Hagrid's hut is of course the official LEGO set, but I try to integrate it as much as possible into this MOC by having various paths that lead to it and incorporating it into the Forbidden Forest. The majority of the groundwork is using plates and tiles to get that varied look, as well as wedge plates in order to create some undulating terrain specifically for the paths. And while the terrain is mostly grass in this area, I have tried to incorporate a little bit of rock work here and there in order to bring it to life a little bit and define this entrance over here to the Hogwarts Castle. Over on this side, we can see a half wall that would separate the interior of the castle courtyards from the exterior castle grounds, and there are some buttresses on the side that are supporting the extra weight. Above here, we have a little walkway with Colin Creevey and the Arithmancy Professor, and below we have a little tribute to the 20th anniversary of LEGO Hogwarts or LEGO Harry Potter with a few of the golden statues in there. Just past this outer wall, we get a first look at one of these interior courtyards, and here we have Hagrid's Care of Magical Creatures class, where Buckbeak presumably attacks Draco, and we have his fan base crying out for him around him. Now, on the far end of the castle is one of my favorite buildings in this entire MOC, and that is of course the bell towers. This was designed in order to mirror the viaduct entrance, which is just back over there, except instead of 2 turrets, there are 2 towers over here, and of course, as the name implies, there would be bells in the upper sections of the tower, but this central section is a very close match to the viaduct entrance on the other side. And at 76 bricks tall, the Astronomy Tower is officially the tallest building in Hogwarts, and it has one of the most rich interiors that I was able to pack into this castle. Starting at the top here, we have a little glimpse into a small Ravenclaw common room, and we do have some Fantastic Beasts character just filling the room a little bit. On the back wall, we have a statue of Rowena Ravenclaw, and we have some navy blue drapings across the room, as well as a few paintings and a little desk. Moving a little bit further below, we have the beginning of the Philosopher's Stone challenges. We have Fluffy's encounter here on the 3rd floor with the harp, and we have a trapdoor just behind Ron there at the back. Once you fall through the trap door, you can see it right there, you get a little bit of a glimpse into the Devil's Snare. Now, after you go through Devil's Snare, of course, is the Room of the Winged Keys, where Harry Potter has to catch the correct key to unlock the door to the next chamber. And as we go further below, we enter the chessboard scene, where Ron gives up his life dramatically in order to save the others and let them continue. And then over here to the side, we have a little bit of a scene that's only from the books, and this is the Potions Challenge, where there are 7 different vials that you have to choose from. 1 will send you forward, 1 will send you backwards. 3 are poison and 2 are wine, I believe. And on the final floor over here, we have a fairly simple room where we have the final challenge between Harry Potter and Professor Quirrell in front of the Mirror of Erised, which currently has Dumbledore watching over. And of course, the Astronomy Tower is not complete without a telescope in a giant hole on the side of the building, and that's what we have just right here. Very ornate and fancy looking telescope, and just behind it you can see some other astronomical instruments on this side turret, which runs the length of the building. Tucked away behind the Astronomy Tower is the back of the long gallery and the central tower over here. You can just get a glimpse into this little exit right here. There is a doorway, but it doesn't lead to much. It used to, but not anymore. It's just a patch of green, but of course that will lead you eventually down here to this courtyard. And the back wall of the long gallery does come out, and inside, if I don't break things, and inside is the library. Now, the library was one of the first interiors that I built, which is why, as far as things go, it is quite a simple build, and most of the books have fallen off of the shelves, but you can imagine that they are just renovating at the moment. It's a fairly big room, and my favorite bit about it is hardly visible, but it is a huge bookcase, huge ornate bookcase right there against the back wall. Above the library is one of the largest classrooms in the MOC, and this is the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, and we have a personal office just behind here. Currently this is set up as Lupin's classroom from 3rd year, and he's currently brewing or using some Wolfsbane potion that Snape had brewed him. And in here we have the scene from the 2nd movie where Professor Lockhart is teaching Defense Against the Dark Arts and the Cornish Pixies. Moving on to behind the viaduct entrance, we have a little fun scene with McGonagall in a tree stump. But in any case, this is a back view into the viaduct entrance, and you can sort of see, if I come around to this side, how it starts mirroring what the bell towers were looking like earlier. The right hand side of the castle is packed with a bunch of interiors directly onto the back of the MOC. Starting in this lower left corner, we can see a little Easter egg to Hogwarts Legacy. This is one of the many challenges where you swim through the Black Lake and you end up in this little cavern where there's a mural of the giant squid on the wall. Next up here is the Potions classroom, which was heavily inspired by the actual set that LEGO released, and I reused many of the same parts, especially those curved tiles up there on the wall, in order to create a bright and colorful scene here on the back of the MOC. One of the lesser known scenes is of course the Hufflepuff common room, which was never showed in the movies and never actually described in the books. However, based on various images from Hogwarts Legacy and descriptions online, we were able to piece together something that is iconically Hufflepuff, with some greenery scattered around and a lot of wood accents, and then reusing some of the sets. This is one of the beds from the hospital wing set, and I've modified it slightly to give it a little bit more of that wooden look, and plopped it here as one of the dormitories to the Hufflepuff common room. Now, above the dungeons is what would eventually be the quad if it was completed over here, but because this is where I've sliced Hogwarts, this is just a little bit of a sneak peek into what would be further along. Coming around the back here, you can see a good look into the central staircase tower, and this is inspired by Hogwarts Legacy rather than the movies, which is why there is a central spiral staircase as opposed to a bunch of rectangular ones that move about in that fashion. However, there are still many portraits and banners on the wall to decorate the main scene. And the staircase does in fact continue all the way down into the dungeons, where it does join up right behind here into that passageway behind the Potions classroom. In this back corner is a little garden scene behind the Hogwarts Great Hall, and if I remove some of the minifigures out of the way, the back panel of, if I remove the trees as well, hold on, if I move everything. After moving some of the minifigures out of the way, you can get a look here at one of the back gardens, which is framed by the central tower and the Hogwarts Great Hall. And this does in fact have a large opening wall where you can get a sneak peek into the Great Hall itself, where there are 4 long tables, plenty of food, plenty of activity, and of course the teacher's table, which is framed by this very, very nice bay window. So the Great Hall, of course, does come apart in 2 halves. This front section is dedicated mostly to the exterior and the courtyard that you can see out front, but there is a small and simple interior that acts as sort of the front lobby or the entrance foyer to the Great Hall that lies beyond it, and you can get a small glimpse into the house point counters, which are there stacked against the wall. Now this is just a large open space that acts as an entrance to the Great Hall that is up against this archway, as well as a corridor which begins off to the side here, which will lead to the grand staircase tower. Now, as for the main part of the Great Hall, this section is dedicated simply to the actual scenes that you can see in the movie, and you see the double doors, which, while they do look rectangular from this angle, of course there is an archway that sits in front of them, and they open as such, which gives you a better view into the Great Hall itself. So this part of the Great Hall was designed so that one side of the walls can be opened, and this gives a great view into the side of the Great Hall from right here, where you can get a glimpse into the teacher's table down at the end and some of the house tables right here along the side. You can also take a look right down the middle, which is an amazing view of the 4 house tables. Now they're designed as simply 2 rows as opposed to 4, but there are 4 distinct tables, so there is a break right there in the middle between Cho and Hermione over there, and you can see the head teachers on their podium there at the back. With my camera shoved right in there, you can get a little bit of a better look right now, and this is probably one of the best scenes in Hogwarts, not only because it's so iconic from the movies, but also the amount of food and vibrance from all of these students makes it such an enjoyable scene to recreate. And of course, just as important as the Great Hall above it are the scenes that it was able to create below. Now these obviously were offered the height of the rockworks, so in turn they were a lot more impressive than they could be anywhere else in the castle. We have a very big space back here which is dedicated to the Chamber of Secrets. There are elements from both the 2002 Lego set as well as some of the more recent ones. We have Harry facing off against a basilisk down there in the middle. In the center here, if I can get a decent enough look, we have the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets, with a bunch of bones scattered around. And while it's hard to see it from this side, but this is the door that does of course open up. If I can get in there, there you are, it does open up, and of course you enter into the Chamber of Secrets. In the remaining space we were able to squeeze in a very cool looking Slytherin common room with a big glass window into the Black Lake. We have some very sleek and simple furniture reflecting the sort of Slytherin vibes, as well as a huge banner right there on the wall. And of course no Slytherin common room is complete without a skull or snakes above the fireplace. And behind the boathouse you can see a very memorable scene that we of course had to include as a nod to probably one of the more important moments in the entire Harry Potter franchise. And there you have it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of Hogwarts. Again, just to reiterate some of the main details to do with this MOC, it is roughly about 25 to 30,000 pieces, and it took approximately about a year to build, and that was of course part of the building series that we uploaded here on YouTube. I tried to upload every week or so, but we did have some lapses in that, and I started this roughly last August and carried through and finished it just in time for the Edinburgh Lego convention. It is an amazing project to work on. I would highly recommend Hogwarts and just the world of Harry Potter to anyone that is into that sort of thing, because you are making some very classical elements of just castles and nature and such, but because you have such a strong reference material to base it all off of, you can't really go wrong, and it also allows a lot of room for interpretation of how you want to perhaps design it, because Hogwarts as a form is very iconic and it's very recognizable, but the little details are what give it something unique to every creator. But thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope it was informative, and I hope you enjoyed seeing all the different elements that brought this MOC together, and I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.